there. A little thing that goes against royal etiquette. Not that we're expecting this to happen, but when we go back to the last state visit by President Trump, there was a moment, wasn't there, that we do remember for being something that he did ever so slightly wrong.
Oh, come on, Philip. What could go wrong? Come on. No, basically, the monarch invites the guest to, review the honor guard. There's going to be a large honor guard to greet the American president. And what happened was Queen Elizabeth, sort of gestured delicately that it was the moment for the president to go forward and to review the troops. But he it's hard to describe, but he kind of just went too quickly. And so he sort of stepped in front of the Queen, which is really not done. The British public was just aghast that this happened. But, even though these events are choreographed, planned, meticulously organized, people are people, and sometimes things just go wrong. I mean, it doesn't even have to be a state visit for something to go wrong. In 2016, when the Obamas came, it wasn't a state visit, it was a post-state visit. They were just kind of coming back to say hello. The helicopter landed at the Windsor Estate here, and the Obamas got out, and the King and Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip were there to greet them. And and there was just this moment where they're going back to the Range Rover, and Prince Philip gets into the driver's seat, and the Secret Service is at that point aghast because they're the ones who drive the president around. But no one was really going to argue with Prince Philip. So there's this other awkward moment where President Obama tries to get into the back seat, and then he has to gently be asked to go to the front seat because the Queen has to get into the back seat. So you have these moments, but the royals are very accustomed to the fact that not everyone understands royal protocol, and so they're very forgiving about trying to ease the way, because after all, the point is to show friendship, to show camaraderie. No one wants to embarrass anyone, even though sometimes they do something embarrassing.
Dana, you know everything about the British royal family and any other state visits that might have happened in the past. Thank you very much for your expertise, and we'll be speaking with Danica Kirker later today. We'll be back on air together at 1 o'clock here local time. That's 8 in the morning Eastern time, and during that time, between now and then, you will have seen a lot of those key events already. We're expecting the arrival of Marine One. We got a little bit ahead of ourselves just earlier. Marine One we're expecting to take off soon from Winfield House in Regent's Park and come here to Windsor Castle. Again, that's going to be happening within the next few minutes. You will be seeing that arrival of President Trump and the First Lady, but then also the much discussed procession on horse-drawn carriages throughout the Windsor estate, and then the other official arrival. That is when you'll probably first see King Charles III and Queen Camilla. All of those events will be live on our YouTube channel, of course, and if you're watching on apnews.com, of course, that's where we will have blog items throughout the day, the latest photos, the latest video as well. And you're getting this live coverage because at the Associated Press we have journalists on the ground throughout the world. And if you value unbiased independent journalism, then please feel free to support us. That would be at apnews.com/donate, apnews.com/donate. Thank you very much for joining us for our live coverage from Windsor Castle. Again, we will be here throughout the day, and Danica Kirker, our expert in all things royal family, will be joining us throughout as well. You're watching live coverage of US President Donald Trump's second unprecedented state visit to the United Kingdom. We are live outside of Windsor Castle, where we are expecting Donald Trump to arrive within the next hour. All of the events today here at Windsor Castle you will be able to watch on this live stream on YouTube, also on apnews.com. On YouTube, of course, you will be able to leave us your comments and your questions, and we will try to respond to those throughout the day. We will be live from here throughout the day, in between the events that you'll be able to follow. That will start with the arrival of US President Donald Trump on the grounds of Windsor Castle on board Marine One. He already spent his first night here in the United Kingdom at Winfield House. That's in central London. That is the US ambassador's residence to the United Kingdom. His welcome ceremony, where he will be met by Prince William and Princess Catherine, will be followed by another welcome from King Charles III and Queen Camilla, and then the events will unfold throughout the day. There will be a carriage procession as well on the grounds of the Windsor estate, and of course the state banquet at the end of the day. All of these events you'll be able to watch here live with us, and we are lucky to be joined throughout the day by one of our resident experts here in London. Danica Kirker is our expert in all things British royal family and based here in London. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Oh, it's my absolute pleasure.
And
Delighted to be here.
It'll be nice to get your expertise throughout the day. And I should mention that Danica will be inside Windsor Castle a little bit later today. You'll be getting a close look at the banquet hall, and you'll be able to tell us what exactly a state visit feels like from the inside, won't you?
Yes, I'm really looking forward to that. As my invitation got caught in the mail, I'm just going to get to watch from the balcony somewhere.
It's better than nothing, and we will get that information from Danica a little bit later, of course, all her impressions of what a state visit entails. A little note on the weather, of course, this being the United Kingdom. It is slightly drizzly, and in the background you'll be able to see that quite a few security forces already here in place, so you'll be seeing quite a few comings and goings of those who are involved in the greeting ceremony for US President Donald Trump. Now, Danica, first thing I want to ask you, you've come here a lot, you cover the royal family quite extensively, and you come to Windsor Castle quite a lot. What does it feel like to you today? Does it feel different to other days?
Well, it's kind of festive today. You know, there are a lot of reporters here, many. And, you know, onlookers, protesters, there's kind of a lot of everything. People, you know, who support President Trump wearing their red hats, the MAGA hats. And you have people in the community who have, you know, gotten out there with little jackets that say, you know, Windsor, and they're out there trying to organize the whole situation. So it's kind of fun.
We should mention that there have, of course, been minor protests so far. Last night here in Windsor, we saw a few dozen protesters who made their way close here to Windsor Castle. A larger protest planned for later today in central London. And worth noting, of course, that central London is a place that, well, essentially President Trump will not see throughout this visit. This is a visit that is contained almost entirely to Windsor Castle, that you can see here behind us. But if there is any protest activity, we'll of course let you know and show you the images from central London as well. Now back to the place that you can see behind us, though, Windsor Castle. This is where this whole state visit will be taking place today. This is the full day of the state visit. Why is it happening here at Windsor Castle? Because I think state visits in the past, well, they've taken place at Buckingham Palace, haven't they?
Well, yes, absolutely. But you know, at the moment, Buckingham Palace is a construction site. So they're doing renovations, and it really just wasn't possible to have anything like that here. But you know, Windsor Castle it's just a proper castle. It's nearly 1,000 years old. It looks like a castle. It has this sort of sense of history. And, you know, it'll give the president a chance to, you know, do those big moments that take place in a state visit, a carriage ride, you know, reviewing the troops, a state banquet, without really leaving sort of the security perimeter around, so he can, you know, his security will, you know, be able to be, you know, guaranteed. At the same time, it sort of keeps the public away. The general public won't be able to see anything at all. And so, you know, there's some benefits to you know, having a single place where you can keep watch on everybody.
let's go through the events then quickly of what you can expect to see today. We will of course be on air with you at regular intervals, but coming up this morning within the next hour, in fact at 11:55 here local time, that is at 6:55 Eastern time, that will be the moment when President Donald Trump and First Lady Melania Trump will be arriving. So there will be an official arrival ceremony. The first one will be Prince William and Princess Catherine, who will be the first to welcome the dignitaries from the United Kingdom. Then there will be the already aforementioned carriage procession. That is when everybody gets to ride in horse-drawn carriages on the Windsor estate to the next welcome, and that is the one that will the official welcome ceremony there will include King Charles III and Queen Camilla. Of course, plenty more events coming up, and of course the main one tonight will be the state banquet with all sorts of dignitaries here, and pretty much all members of the British royal family also in attendance. So this is a state visit. It is an unprecedented second state visit for a non-royal. That's what makes this so special. What is a state visit is a pretty basic question, but what does it entail specifically here in the United Kingdom? It is pretty much the highest honor, isn't it, that a visiting dignitary can receive.
You're absolutely right, Philip. It is absolutely an honor. And, you know, state visits are really rare. There's only 2, sometimes 3 a year. But they're this moment where the royal family steps forward as the diplomats in chief of the nation, and both to their friends and to their maybe not so close friends, their frenemies, gives them a chance to really get the pomp and circumstance that Britain can absolutely deliver in spades. So there's soldiers who will perform absolutely in synchronized fashion. There is the beautiful flowers, there's the banquet, there's all the hoo-ha and whatnot that come with a royal visit. And it's a really unusual thing in that no one else has ever had a second state visit. It's not just the second time for President Trump, it's just the second time ever.
And it's going to look, as we mentioned, it's going to look quite different in comparison, maybe also, to the last one that happened here in Windsor. That was French President Emmanuel Macron in July. He did get the carriage procession as well, the horse-drawn carriage, but that was right through the streets of Windsor that you can see right behind us.
He got the carriage procession through the city. And so he would have more of an opportunity to see the general public. For President Trump, that's not an option. You know, the security around him is much more difficult. So I think that what you're going to see is a carriage ride with President Trump in the front and other dignitaries with him, Queen Camilla, King Charles, etc. And they'll go along the route that will be covered. You know, along the route there'll be service people. Mm-hmm. So it won't be like he won't have anyone around. It just won't be the general public, and so it'll just look different. And plus, you know, you have Windsor Castle. It's a proper castle. Buckingham Palace is a lovely place. There's the balcony and the facade, but inside it's not really like that at all. Some people have described it as kind of dreary, but you know, the point is that Windsor Castle inside has lots of gold leaf, lots of Holbein paintings, Van Dyck's, lots of hoo-ha and whatnot in there too. It's likely to like it.
Yeah, we know someone who likes the gold, right? I wonder, in the last few days we've of course heard a lot about what there is to gain for those who are participating in this state visit. Maybe it's getting somewhat political as a question, if you will, but what is there to be gained from an event like this one, for the royal family first of all, for the United Kingdom maybe as a whole, and then of course for President Trump as well? What's in it for them?
Well, can I just first say to you, Phil, that the most important, I would just think that regardless of your political stripes, this is a really special moment. You know, hundreds of people have been preparing again and again, you know, rehearsing, cutting the proper flowers, cutting the grass to the right length, you know, braiding the manes of the horses, polishing their hooves, shining everything within an inch of its life. Regardless of your politics, President Trump is the guest of the king, and everyone within the royal household is making sure that he is greeted with all the dignity and respect that a visitor to the palace should receive.
As I think plenty of commentators would say, is the main aim of this state visit might be simply for US President Donald Trump to leave a happy man.
Well, in a lot of ways, in its simplest form, particularly the state banquet, it's, you know, it's the king inviting you over for dinner, except the king lives actually at a castle, and you want to show him a good time. Part of the whole point of this is that, you know, particularly the political leaders of the country get an opportunity to, you know, meet one another in a more convivial setting than sitting around a table, you know, at a summit. You know, you get to know one another, to get a chance to sort of see their stripes. And so you want to show them a good time, but you want to show them a moment where, you know, the United Kingdom, you know, offers its hand of friendship to the United States. It wants to show that the two countries are, in fact, really good friends.
As we stand here, preparations are underway inside the Windsor estate. We're seeing the horse-drawn carriages already being prepared for that official welcoming ceremony. I also mentioned earlier that there's a lot of back and forth behind us, because these are people who are slowly but surely arriving on the Windsor Castle grounds to be part of all the festivities here today. You mentioned the banquet already. I think we should talk.
I want to talk about the banquet. You know I want to talk about the banquet.
At length about the banquet, but let's muster all the enthusiasm that I know you have for this event, and you will of course be entering Windsor Castle later today to see the whole setting, to see what the banquet hall is actually going to look like. Now, tell me a little bit more about what it is going to look like, but also, is this truly a place where there will be no politics? Is it truly a place where there will be no conversations about politics? How can we imagine?
How can I possibly know what they're going to talk about among themselves at dinner? No, look, first of all, it'll be a very grand setting. St. George's Hall is, you know, some people might remember that it was during the early 90s. It was one of these places. The hall caught fire. A light, you know, hit on a curtain, and there was tremendous damage. So. At the moment, the important part of that is that it's now all been rebuilt, and it'll look really fantastic, beautiful. You know, even though it was, you know, built a couple hundred years ago, it's now going to look really good. And inside, you know, they'll have the great mahogany table, which is 50 meters long. This is like half the size of a football field. You know, it's polished so that you could see yourself in that thing. Okay, now. Then there's the table itself, I mean the setting itself, which takes 5 full days to prepare, because there's so many things you need to put on this table, you know, and you know the silver is 200 years old, the flowers will be beautiful, and you know there is so much to say about just how really hard everyone's going to work to make sure that everything looks good. And there'll be a lot of people. There are 160 people. 160 people at this table. I mean, it's not like you could talk to someone on the other side. The royals will be sprinkled in among the guests. And then, of course, there's the tiaras. Everyone at the office is tired of me talking about the tiaras, but I will talk about them anyway.
But we want to know about
it. I think so. Everyone wants to talk about the tiaras. Anyway, it'll look spectacular. You know, the tiaras are important because they're generally precious stones. They'll, you know, diamonds, emeralds, rubies, everything you could possibly imagine. You know, the female royals will generally wear the tiaras, and you will find the reflection of those in the candlelight. It's just guaranteed to look absolutely stunning. And of course, the dresses will be, you know, not Technicolor ballroom, but to the floor with decorations and sashes, and you know, just wonderful.
That's later tonight. Right now, as we speak, you're seeing images of Marine One that is taken off from central London, from Regent's Park. That is where the US ambassador to London has his residence, and that's where President Trump and Melania Trump spent their night. Marine One now on its way from central London to here, to Windsor Castle and onto the grounds of Windsor Castle, where we will see Marine One landing very shortly. Inside the next few minutes, we will then see President Trump and Melania Trump exit that helicopter and being welcomed on the grounds by Prince William and Princess Catherine. That is most likely going to be one of their main roles during this US state visit to the United Kingdom. You'll be able to see all of those key events here throughout the day, including, of course, that welcome ceremony. We mentioned already the carriage procession, the banquet thereafter that will most likely give us some of the most indelible images of this state visit by Donald Trump to the United Kingdom. I wanted to ask you just a little something about the things that could go wrong. Because things can go wrong. They might be little things. They might be just a little gaffe here or there, a little thing that goes against royal etiquette. Not that we're expecting this to happen, but when we go back to the last state visit by President Trump, there was a moment, wasn't there, that we do remember for being something that he did ever so slightly wrong.
Oh, come on, Philip. What could go wrong? Come on. No, basically, the monarch invites the guests to, review the honor guard. There's going to be a large honor guard to greet the American president. And what happened was Queen Elizabeth, sort of gestured delicately that it was the moment for the president to go forward and to review the troops. But he it's hard to describe, but he kind of just went too quickly. And so he sort of stepped in front of the Queen, which is really not done. The British public was just aghast that this happened. But, even though these events are choreographed, planned, meticulously organized, people are people, and sometimes things just go wrong. I mean, it doesn't even have to be a state visit for something to go wrong. In 2016, when the Obamas came, it wasn't a state visit, it was a post-state visit. They were just kind of coming back to say hello. The helicopter landed at the Windsor State here, and the Obamas got out, and the King and Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip were there to greet them. And and there was just this moment where they're going back to the Range Rover, and Prince Philip gets into the driver's seat, and the Secret Service.
Under engine, get out the cockpit, with his hands to the right. Right leg.
President, the Guard of Honour, the Grenadier Guards, the Coldstream Guards, and the Scots Guards are present and awaiting your entry.
Starmer will move to the left in threes. 4 threes! Left!
bodyguard by the centre. Quick march.
No competition. You can go in ahead and I'll
Justin with his camera.
amazing.
I can take Isaac now.
Okay. Just pack it down the camera and then.
Jonathan, I'm leaving you here because you're... Yeah, that's fine. Jonathan, you good to go?
Honestly, I'm sorry, I'm going to keep you because all my stuff is still not packed away.
Where is it? Oh, no, that's fine. Don't worry. Okay, you guys, I'll take you. Yeah, to go back out the way we
Go back
came
the way
in.
we came in.
Yeah, so back
Going back to advanced gate
Yeah,
down?
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then report again for the beat the retreat.
Yes, please. Yeah, thank you. 3:30. Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Jonathan.
Thank you.
So you can start. Alright, I know, no worries, I know it's...
Can I leave my camera here then?
When you got everything?
So I can go and get on everything. Okay, but you're happy with that shot? Thank you.
And all the shuffle.
do you know what we were further out last time.
Yeah.
So
I have a feeling we were sort of like coming off.
they had a bit there and it went out on the gravel. So the angle was awful. So, and then getting out the carriage. I feel that guy stood in the way of
I
everything.
know, it's like, he wasn't here last time. I mean, I was okay, he was clearly fine up to the right, so the bit of them getting up to that carriage was okay.
his hands to the right. Right leg. Shoulder! Arms!
Mr. President, the Guard of Honour of the Grenadier Guards, the Coldstream Guards, and the Scots Guards are present and awaiting your inspection. Guard of honor will move to the left in threes. 4 threes! Left! bodyguard, by the centre, quick, march!
No competition. You can go on ahead and I'll
Justin with his camera.
Amazing.
I can take Isaac now.
Okay. Just pack it down the camera and then. Duncan, I'm leaving you here because you're. Yeah, that's fine. Duncan, you good to go?
Honestly, I'm sorry, I'm going to keep you because all my stuff is still not packed away.
Where is it? Oh, no, that's fine. Don't worry. Okay. You guys, I'll take you. Yeah, to go back out the way we
Go back
came
the way
in.
we came in.
Yeah, so back.
Go back to advanced gate
Yeah,
and down?
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then report again for the retreat.
Yes, please. Yeah, thank you. 3:30. Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Duncan.
Thank you.
So you can start with it. Just keep holding it for the whole day. Right, I know, no worries, I know it's...
Can I leave my camera here then?
When you got everything?
So I can go and get ready. Okay, if you're happy with that shot. Thank you.
And all of you shuffle.
what we were further out last time.
Yeah.
So
I have a feeling we were sort of like coming home.
they had a bit there, and it went out on the gravel. So the angle was awful. And then getting out the carriage. That guy stood in the way of
I
everything.
know, it's like, he wasn't here last time. I mean, I was okay, he would be cleared here far enough to the right, so the bit of them getting onto that carriage was okay.